Good afternoon and welcome to FCTV Studio. I, of course, am Jeff Wyman, the Government Access Coordinator for Falmouth Community Television. And with me for the first time is Representative Dylan Fernandes, who was elected this past fall.
That's right.
To represent which districts?
Yeah, great question, because it is a little confusing and can get a little complicated. Yeah. So I represent half of Falmouth, precincts 1, 2, 5, and 6. And I represent all of Dukes and all of Nantucket counties. So that's all of Nantucket, then the 6 towns on the Vineyard, plus you can't forget Gosnold, which is the smallest municipality in the entire state. And I've been out there a couple of times to Cuttyhunk. So probably the most coastline of any district in Massachusetts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what a coastline it is for folks who want to visit over the summer. Please come. It's beautiful. So you've been in the House now for 4+ months.
That's about right. A little over, yeah.
So people talk about, you know, your freshman year, your freshman time in the House. So how is that?
So it's a really exciting, really fast-paced period in the House. And you get in my freshman class, there's 12 of us, 12 new people, 11 Democrats, 1 Republican, and it's a really interesting group. And I think it's probably the youngest group, possibly in the history of the State House. And so out of the 12 of us, 8 of us are under the age of 35. And so, you know, wow. I'm young, right? I'm 27 and I look like I'm like 16, right? But there's someone in there that's actually 5 years younger than I am. And so we have a really kind of young group that's focused on climate change issues, focused on tackling issues of social and economic justice. So it's a really exciting class to be in. And when you start out in the House, every class starts out in this bullpen. It's called the Freshman Bullpen. And it's a room not much bigger than this room. It's actually about the same size as this room. And there's 12 of us, plus all of our aides, packed in this tiny room that doesn't have any sort of like triage center. So people just file in, like without any regard to people's privacy. And so for a good 3-month period, we were in this room that could just be completely chaotic and filled with people. We actually had a band come play in the room once. So not a great work environment, but luckily there's a library right down the hall. Excellent. Where you can get some work done in. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it sounds pretty fast-paced, but yeah. You know, young people are used to that fast pace, and we kind of need to keep going forward. That's so right. You had mentioned when we were talking before the show started about issues that were concerns of yours in committees that might be addressing some of those issues. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. And so when I was thinking about the committees that I wanted to request, the committees that I wanted to sit on, I really thought about the core issues facing Falmouth. And those to me are issues of environmental stewardship, water quality infrastructure. They're issues of substance misuse and mental health. We have some real acute problems here in Falmouth. And also, this is a district that is unlike any other district, as I was talking about before, and that I represent 3 different counties. I'm the only district in the state that represents 3 different counties. And so I have these particular issues around county governments and local governments, different sheriff's offices, and the like. And so when I'm thinking about the uniqueness of this district, that was really informed my committee decision process. And so I put in a request to the Speaker to sit on the Committee on the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, and was lucky enough to get that committee. I also put in for substance misuse and mental health. And as we know, here in Falmouth, we're a town that's particularly hard hit by this opioid epidemic. And some people that I went to high school with have suffered from this disease, and unfortunately some have passed away because of it. It's a really devastating crisis here and something I'm committed to. So that's a really important committee to sit on, to be able to have informed policy decisions on that issue. And so I requested that and was lucky enough to get that. And then also requested the Municipalities and Regional Government Committee, because this is a really, as I said, a really kind of unique district. And so every single committee I requested, I was put on, which is terrific. Only freshmen that got every committee they requested. And these are committees that will allow me to really tackle and view the issues affecting Falmouth on the state level. And I think that's a really big benefit for the district.
Absolutely. It's seems like you've been pretty successful in narrowing your vision to express the needs of Falmouth and furthering the concepts and ideas of what our community needs, and that's greatly appreciated. You've been fairly successful so far in your freshman year. So some of the bills that you've been working on, you mentioned before that there's several of them. So rattle off a couple of them and where they are and what your goal is with them.
Yeah. So on the substance misuse piece, obviously, the Cape and Islands has some of the highest opioid death rates in the state.
Sure.
And this is an issue that's really kind of personal to me, having grown up here. And so one of the bills that I crafted and filed this year that has a hearing this Monday actually is on long-term treatment options. And so when it comes to tackling substance misuse, when it comes to tackling opioid and heroin addiction, there is a lot of research out there that says that short-term detox is the right thing to do. We have a lot of data on short-term detox. We know that it's effective. We know that it works. We know when you're combating opioid and heroin addiction, that's the route you should take. Then there's the post-detox period, which that's long-term treatment. And there isn't a lot of data around long-term treatment. And there are a myriad of long-term treatment options that range from acupuncture to recovery coaches to equine therapy, huge range of long-term recovery options, but not a lot of data on which options are the most effective and which options are the most cost efficient. And that is a really important piece when we are spending millions of dollars as a state on this epidemic, and also when private individuals are spending a lot of out-of-pocket money on long-term treatment. And so we need to be giving people addicted to heroin and opioids the best treatment options possible. And this bill aims at setting up a commission to study the effectiveness and the cost effectiveness of these long-term treatment options so that we can give people suffering the best available treatments. So really important bill, really important piece on the opioid epidemic, and I look forward to fighting for it in my committee hearing on Monday. But as I talked earlier, I filed a couple of bills around environmental stewardship. And for my generation, for my children's generation, there's not going to be a bigger issue that impacts us than climate change. Climate change is something that's going to affect not only our environment, but has will have huge ramifications on our economy and our national security. The military has made climate change one of its core issues. So this is something we need to address. Massachusetts has been a leader here, but I think we can go farther. And I think we need to be more aggressive, especially given what we've seen on the national level. We have a president who said that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. So in a failure of national leadership, the states really need to step up. And so one bill I filed that I'm working with the Woods Hole Research Center on advocating for is a bill that makes Massachusetts sign on and be a party to the Paris Climate Agreement. And this is a really important piece because we need to show the rest of the country and the rest of the world that despite what's going on in Washington, Massachusetts is a state that believes in science. It's a state that wants to combat climate change. And this bill would really push us out front as a national leader and an international player around climate change policy. So that's an important piece. That'll be coming up for a hearing fairly soon. And we're going to have an advocacy day on the State House around that with the Woods Hole Research Center. So stay tuned, and we'll get folks involved from Falmouth if they want to come up with the folks from the Woods Hole Research Center to have an advocacy day at the State House around it. And another piece around environmental stewardship is ocean acidification. And so we know that our oceans have been steadily acidifying over the years. Mm-hmm. And that is in large part because the ocean is the main tool, I guess, the main environmental piece that sucks in carbon from our atmosphere. So the ocean sucks in a lot of the carbon that's released into our atmosphere. That lowers the pH, and that's compounded by water runoff and wastewater runoff that also lowers the pH and disrupts our water quality. And so why is this a problem, right? Well, if the ocean becomes too acidic, shellfish in the ocean can't form. And we've seen over in the Pacific Northwest, the entire shellfishing industry had to move to Hawaii. A multi-million-dollar industry had to move to Hawaii to find cleaner waters because their pH was too low, their ocean was too acidic. So this isn't only a huge bill because of the cultural and environmental implications, but also has huge economic implications as well. So that's a really important piece. And we also filed a couple pieces around workers' rights, around implicit bias training, and some really kind of interesting and novel pieces that I'm really excited to be advocating for.
Excellent. This is pretty progressive stuff. So it sounds like it's excellent to have young people in leadership in the State House, because who else is going to take care of this stuff? I mean, because it's going to affect you, like you said, and your children and in your generations. So bills aside, you guys just went through a budget process.
Yeah.
When did that begin? Maybe you talk to me about some of the hurdles, some of the big appropriations in the budget this year, and and how's it turned out?
That's a great question, and a very timely question, because we just finished the budget last week, just wrapped it up. And so the budget negotiations start the entire month before the budget. We take up the budget, and those come through conversations with the chairman of Ways and Means, Chairman Dempsey, about your priorities, your budget priorities, not only for the state, but locally. And my focus during this budget was to focus locally, to focus on the district, to focus on Falmouth, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. And so the budget, it's marked by really late night sessions, and it's marked, and there's a lot of, they tell you kind of which items are coming up, which pieces are coming up in terms of, all the amendments on healthcare are going to be meeting for this hour-long period, or all the amendments on kind of environmental pieces are going to be meeting. And then you go to this room where the chairman's there, and you make a pitch for your amendments. And I filed a few amendments that I think really benefit our region, and am thrilled to say that we got in 3 budget amendments, which is more than any other freshman got in. And those budget amendments total to almost $250,000 for our region, which is just terrific. And there's a few different pieces there. There's one piece of that budget that goes towards substance misuse and mental health treatment, obviously a really critical piece in our district. There's another part that's more island focused, that allows people coming off island to help have some compensation for their transportation, because a lot of the people from and this is for people of lesser means. So as you can imagine, living on an island and getting care in Boston can really be cost prohibitive, because you have to take 2 boats, you have to take 3 different modes of transportation. Oftentimes you have to stay overnight because there's no way you can catch a boat back home. And so for a lot of people from lower socioeconomic means, it's almost impossible to achieve the care that they need. And so there's a little funding for that. And then the biggest piece, as I talked about shellfish earlier, is around shellfish propagation. And we scored over $150,000 for shellfish propagation across the region. And this is really important. Really important not only because it means jobs and it's an economic boost to our region, but also we have a $4 billion water infrastructure need here on the Cape and Islands. I mean, that is a huge amount of money.
That's a huge amount of money.
Huge amount of money. And we know that water quality is central to what makes Falmouth a great place to live. I mean, that's why a lot of us live here. That's why a lot of people visit us year-round. And so we need to be focusing on preserving our water quality. And shellfish are not only delicious, but they're natural filters, and they filter out the nitrogen in our water. And that means, and nitrification of our water leads to algae blooms and the like, and makes our water unpalatable to swim in, and it can actually cause, if there's algae blooms, if there's over nitrification of our water, that can cause real damage to the ecosystem. And so these shellfish act as natural filters, filtering that out. So it's not just economic, it's not just cultural, has huge environmental implications. So just thrilled that we were able to get all these items in and secured probably about $100,000 more than any other freshman this session. So I feel like it was a really big win for the district, and I feel really good about our accomplishments in that budget period.
Yeah, great. I appreciate your prioritization, and I think water quality also is impeccably important for our economy and for naturalists as well. I mean, we care about the ecosystem. We're part of the ecosystem. Yeah. We can't ever forget that, and it's all connected. So thank you for taking care of these things. So you're 1/3 of the delegation from this area. You work with Senator Vinny DiMacedo and Representative David Vieira as well. Yeah. We were talking before about groups of delegates and folks that you work with at the State House. And people have coined the term, once you were elected, the Portuguese delegation. But there were some other terms that you wanted to coin as well.
Yeah. Well, so I'm part of a couple of caucuses in the State House, and one group that I really enjoy being a part of is the Portuguese Caucus. And my last name is Fernandes, and we have Vieira and DiMacedo, and we joke that we're the Portuguese law firm, right? Fernandes, Vieira, DiMacedo. But there's a lot of other Portuguese folks up there, especially on the South Coast, New Bedford, Fall River, that region. And there's a lot of people in our district who come from a Portuguese background. My family came here 3 generations ago and started a strawberry farm out off of Davisville. And they immigrated here and were part of the cultural fabric of Falmouth, because a lot of families here had that similar Portuguese background. And that stretches across the district in Nantucket and the Vineyard. In the Vineyard especially, we have a large Brazilian population as well. And so the Portuguese Caucus really looks at Portuguese-specific issues. How can we involve the Portuguese community in civic engagement and getting involved locally? So it's a really important group to be a part of in terms of serving this district. But another group I'm a part of, and I'm just announcing this here for the first time, so it's pretty exciting. But we started a Millennial Caucus in the House, and this is a caucus for legislators under the age of 35. And there's a growing number. There's a little under 25 of us who are under the age of 35 up there now. And we're focusing on issues that are kind of specific to our generation. So I mentioned climate change earlier, because that's probably one of the core issues of our time. But also student loans, right? I mean, my generation, right? A lot of people in my generation are graduating with $50,000, $100,000 in debt, which is just crazy. And UMass Amherst right now costs $100,000 for in-state tuition. That is a real problem, and our state schools should be lifting up people from lesser means, not charging them what I believe is a cost-prohibitive education. And so we want to look at student debt issues. I'm actually the co-sponsor of a student borrowers bill advanced by someone, another young legislator, Natalie Higgins, who's just a year older than I am. We're working on that piece. And we're also going to focus on the digital economy, because this is something where government is a little behind on when it comes to focusing on digital economy issues. And so we're going to be looking at pieces around big data, right? So big data, as folks may know, is just this huge accumulation of data based on all of your data points online. I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but basically one of the things that we've seen is some companies will discriminate against people based on the big data that they get that indicates what their online profile is. So so companies have a very good idea what a person's race is, how old a person is, and all this demographic information. And so sometimes they will target people based on those demographic data points on specific ads. And they will sometimes charge certain demographics higher rates than others. And that's discrimination, and that's an instance where government hasn't really caught up with the economy. And I think there needs to be some work there. And who better to tackle that and take that on than a generation that grew up on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably a lot of that data is the younger generation
I know.
as well.
I don't even want to know. Yeah, yeah.
So we're getting into it a little bit as well, but I want to talk some about like the current things that you're working on. We talked about past bills that you've been working on as well. Some current things in instances like that, some future considerations that you have to put forth and to discuss at the State House. Yeah,
one of the big things coming up that we're going to see some movement on is this Airbnb tax. And so this is a tax, and folks in Falmouth are well aware of this, and they've been passing this in town meeting for years, and I'm going to be filing the home rule petition they passed in town meeting. But we're going to see movement on this from a statewide level. And so for folks who don't know, basically Airbnb, short-term rentals, are not taxed, whereas hotels and B&Bs are taxed. And so it's a completely unlevel playing field for essentially the same product. And towns are losing out on a lot of revenue. And so this bill which by the way Airbnb supports, Airbnb wants to be taxed. It's kind of rare to have the main organization that's getting a tax saying, hey, we want it. So it's a really pretty uncontroversial measure. We're going to see that move through, and that's going to bring a lot of money back to Falmouth and a lot of money back to the Vineyard in Nantucket. Nantucket, I mean, some of the room rentals on Nantucket are like $25,000 a week, wow. Right? And so they're going to be getting a lot of money back. And because our region is going to be so affected by this, because our region is going to be getting a lot of money back locally, but also putting a lot of money back to the state, because a percentage of it does go to the state. I think it's really important that people in our region have their voices heard on this issue. So I met with Chairman Mikowitz, who's the chair advancing this bill. I met with him yesterday, actually, and I sent him a letter to his office signed by most members of the Cape delegation requesting that a meeting be held here on the Cape. And so we're going to see that around mid-June, where we're going to bring this Airbnb hearing out of the State House onto the Cape so that we can have our local concerns heard as well, which is, I think, is really important.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've covered a lot today, and I appreciate you coming in. You had mentioned before a hearing that's happening on Monday, which I believe will be streamed at the State House's website. If anyone's interested in watching that, you can Google it or go to, I don't know the website per hand, but they do actually stream a bunch of these live. I don't know if it's a subcommittee hearing, they may not, but also that hearing, another hearing, and an event at the State House. So if people want to learn more about some things that are happening up at the State House that you're involved with, how do they get in contact with you in your office?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. In my office, my new office, I don't look at it as my office. I look at it as the office of the people in Falmouth and on the Vineyard in Nantucket. It's room 263. It's a nice office, actually. It has a nice big window. I was kind of shocked at how well we made out. But I invite anyone in Boston up to the State House. Come swing by. Come say hello, and we'll take you on a little tour of the building. And if I'm not there, my aide certainly will make you feel welcome and take you around. And I think that's a terrific experience for people. And if you do want to get in touch with us, don't hesitate to reach out. Right on the MA Legislator website, I believe it's just malegislature.gov. If you just type in Fernandes, my office number, email, and address pop right up. So come reach out to us anytime about any issue. We've worked on a lot of constituency issues in this past 5 months for people in Falmouth, whether it's helping them get the unemployment checks that they hadn't been receiving, or just basic constituency issues about reaching out to certain agencies that they haven't heard back back from, reach on out to us, and we're more than happy to help. And please come visit us up at the State House.
Well, thanks again, Representative Fernandes, for taking the time to come talk with us and the folks of Falmouth and other folks in your district. We will get this program out to them as well. And again, as always, thank you for watching. We will have the representative back again in the near future. Thanks.